What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee. Look, I'm really excited to be teaming up, to be partnering up with old friends, so to speak, or an old partner, so to speak. I have Dr. Guy Kezirian, who was here on, I want to say like episode 20 or so, where we talked about your entry, your foray from ophthalmology into surgery vision, and then eventually into creating something that I think we all know, the majority of listeners know as the Physician CEO program, which is a great business immersion program between surgery vision as well as the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. And first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lee. It's great to be with you again.
It's good for you to be back. We took a little bit of a break last year, obviously because of COVID, and we did not, or the program did not go on, obviously because of all the COVID restrictions and so forth. But the COVID restrictions are lifting, and the program is back with a vengeance.
That's right. We wanted to be, we wanted to maintain the live format. That's part of our brand. We didn't want to change that, and so we have to protect the brand.
Exactly. So listen, before we jump into the Physician CEO program, the specifics of it, which I think everybody who's listening is really going to want to listen up and see if they want to be associated with this program, or at least sign up. Let's talk about branding, because that is something that I think physicians, especially nowadays, are kind of secretly fighting this battle. They don't know that they're fighting this battle of branding. But I think as we have more and more physicians who are, joining these large hospital systems, you start to notice that your name on your white coat gets smaller and smaller, and the logo of the hospital gets bigger and bigger. So you're almost debranded, depersonalized. You know what I'm trying to say. You are not who you want to be anymore. You're more a representative of the hospital as opposed to you. So let's talk about branding. And these are some of the things that you teach in Physician CEO. So take us through branding.
Sure, it's a big question. It's a big topic. We do entire courses on it. But let's talk about some fundamentals and some concepts around branding. What is a brand? It comes from on cows, we sear a brand into them to identify who owns them and who they are, and how they're associated. So the word brand is used in a lot of different ways. It's used, though, in marketing to identify an association between a product, if you will, and a name. So people sometimes think of a brand as being like a logo or a sign or whatever. And sure, that's the external manifestation of it. But when we use the term branding in marketing, it's a much bigger concept.
Yeah, I think I definitely look at it like the logo, the Nike swoosh, the Tesla icon and so forth.
Yep. And when we talk about branding and marketing with a capital M, marketing, and the concept of marketing, a brand is really a representation. It's a promise. It's a promise of you, of what you are. And so, we take brands for granted. If I put you in a grocery store and I said, go buy some, pick a product, ketchup, you're probably going to go to the ketchup aisle, and there'll be other ones there, but chances are you're going to pick the one that you recognize, which, one of the top brands in the world is Heinz. So you might pick the Heinz ketchup because that's one you know. What did that just do? It saved you time. It reduced uncertainty. It gave you confidence. You've had Heinz ketchup a lot of times. You're going to buy the same Heinz ketchup. You're going to get the same product you had before. And you didn't have to worry, is this one going to be good, the generic and whatever? It just made it more efficient. Without brands, our lives would be so cluttered with decision-making about trivial things that we couldn't get through the day. So brands are really a way for you to give your clients trust, efficiency, reliability, and transparency into what they're going to get, which is where I think a lot of brands fall down. So I talked a minute ago, just joking around about protecting the brand of the Physician CEO program and not wanting to go virtual because it's part of our brand. Well, it's not part of our sign or our logo. It's a part of our promise. The promise we have with Physician CEO is that you will not only absorb a lot of new material and great concepts and frameworks, but you're going to meet great people, and you're going to have this experience of being off-site and a chance to look at your life, look at your future, create a business plan, and do all these different things. And that's the promise. That's the package. That's the product that people expect. And we weren't willing to compromise on that. So if you don't think about your brand and managing your brand that way, and you just say, oh, well, okay, we'll modify whatever. I'll take and make me the small doctor on my lapel and make the hospital the big lapel, the big sticker on my arm. Then what you basically said is I'm going to change the association of who I am with who the hospital is, and let the patients now see the hospital as being their provider or their doctor instead of seeing me as their physician. So these things about brand, the brands are a promise, brands are about integrity, brands are about transparency and efficiency, and we take them for granted, but it's something that we want everyone to really think about as they go through and create their practices.
So how do doctors right now, the one who's listening, who is a hospitalist, the one who is a surgicalist like myself, who does trauma surgery and acute care surgery, the ones who are employed by hospitals, who it's important to have a reputation. It's important to make a name for yourself. But when you have a guaranteed amount of patients who are coming in, or you have a guaranteed amount of business that's coming in, convince them as to why branding is important. And how do they start with branding if you're employed by a hospital?
Well, I'm going to say a couple of things that are probably not welcome right now.
This is Docs Outside the Box, Dr. Guy. We welcome everything. All comers. Come on.
When you go to work for a hospital, who's your customer?
That's a good question. I would say my customer is my patients.
You'd like to think that.
Yeah.
Not even close. Is the patient paying you? No.
No.
The hospital's paying you. Is the patient hiring and firing you? No. The hospital's hiring and firing you. Did the patient choose you? No. The hospital chose you. So in that sense, if you're working for the hospital, you may be fulfilling the role of a physician, providing, diagnostics and care and whatnot. But in that sense, your customer is the hospital. So if you've chosen to be a hospitalist and you haven't realized that, then you might be disappointing your customer. Now, you may say, I'm working for a hospital and I hate the hospital, which is something I hear a lot.
Yeah.
They don't want to be serving the hospital. But the reality is you are. If you're working for the hospital, that's your customer. So you want to think now, if I'm working for the hospital, and theoretically you want to be successful at working for the hospital, even if you don't particularly want to be working at the hospital next year or the year after, but you're doing it now, then you need to think about how am I going to maintain my brand and my product to that hospital. So maybe they've got little things that bug you, but they're part of your job, like getting your charts completed by the end of the day or the end of the week, getting your coding right. Maybe it's about showing up on rounds on time or seeing patients on their schedule. All these things may go against your grain as a physician, but if you've chosen that role as a hospitalist, then you need to think, what's going to make my customer happy? Because no matter where you are, if you're in a product, or if you're in a situation where you are the product, you want to make that customer happy because it's going to lead to those advancements that you might want. So if you're seen by the hospital, oh, that's the reliable doctor, let's always go to them. Suddenly you're going to be finding yourself in different positions and different roles on the right committees. You're going to be working your way up the administrative ladder in a way that maybe may be more fulfilling to you in a long sense. But the first thing you have to ask when you're talking about branding, and you have to have a very clear picture of it, is who is my customer?
Wow.
And I think a hospitalist has a different customer than a doctor in private practice.
So a hospitalist, you would say the customer is a hospitalist, the customer is the hospital. If you're a private practice, or if you are, practicing on your own, your customer is your physician. How is it possible that someone can be your employer? Well, basically your employer is purchasing your services by salary and what have you, correct?
Sure. But let's unpack that a little bit further. So now you're a hospitalist and you're working in a hospital, right? You're working with tons of people. You've got nurses and techs and probably physician's assistants and lab people and admissions people, billing people. You're working with a lot of people all day long. And in that sense, if you want your brand to be something that comes back and rewards you and makes you feel good and makes you more effective, then you have to think about all of these different stakeholders, all of these different people in your environment as also being, in a way, part of you, part of your package. So, for example, if you come in, and I've just been dealing with this in another situation very recently, where the doctor's great, the employer loves them, The patients love him, but he treats the staff like dirt. Just doesn't respect the staff, treats the staff terribly. And he's having a very difficult time succeeding in his practice because it's in a very large, practice where there's a big staff. And so this is a failure on the doctor's part to understand that his brand goes beyond just what he's presenting to the people who might be paying him. Because to be effective in his brand, to be effective in his job, he has to also get all this other support team to work with him in a cooperative way. And frankly, it just makes the day nicer to just have people around that respect you and you respect them. So all this goes into, I know we got a little bit away from the classical concept of branding, but in the concept of being a physician and maintaining your brand, I mean, what do you want your brand to be? You don't want to be that doctor that's throwing instruments in the OR and making the nurses cry. You want to be the doctor that they say, oh, we're going to get to work with Dr. Darko today. This is wonderful. Mm-hmm. And they're happy about it. And then they're going to do a better job for you and you're going to do a better job for them. And then your customer who was the hospital is going to think, wow, that guy's awesome.
Wow. Okay. So once you start going deeper let's take it a step deeper, right? Because I think that makes a lot of sense. For the physician who's having wanderlust and thinking, you know what, I enjoy what I do within the hospital, but I would like to start taking a step outside and start doing other things that put me out there, whether that's public speaking, whether that's creating a vlog, a podcast, or maybe real estate or what have you. In terms of branding in that sense, how does someone develop, or how does a physician who's listening develop some type of clarity first to determine this is what I do, these are my customers, and I want to start shifting away from the hospital in terms of that being my primary service? What's your advice in that realm?
Well, it's a really, really important question. And the entire thing, and we focus on this a lot in the Physician CEO program, as you know, but is this concept of self-awareness. Physicians,
I hear that said a lot, but I think so many people have, it seems like that definition that's just in the cloud, really, and right. It's not really granular, so to speak. How do you put how do I feel it? How do I understand that?
Sure. So self-awareness is used a lot of different ways. In this context, I'm referring to the concept of being aware of, first of all, what really motivates you, what really means something to you. And then secondly, how you're manifesting that in the world to see how people see you in the way that you behave and you treat them. And I'm going to say that of all the people that I run into in life, with the exception of, some software engineers and people who just spend all day in front of a computer, physicians are among some of the least self-aware people that we run into. And it's something that they really need to develop. We work on this very hard in the program, because to be effective as a physician CEO, you have to be completely self-aware. And where does self-awareness begin? It begins with true humility. True humility. Not fake humility, like, oh, shucks, whatever, oh, don't say nice things about me, but give me more compliments. True humility. Understanding who you really are, what you're good at, what you're not good at. Frankly, admitting and knowing what you're not good at is super important, because whether or not you want to really admit it, everyone else is very aware of what you're not good at. Everyone else around you has to deal with that all the time. So you may as well start there. And if you run up against something you don't really know how to do well, ask for help. People would respect you for that, because they'll say, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what his limits are, and he's going to get the job done, going to prioritize the job over his ego. We've all worked for people who had no self-awareness. We've all worked for people who blustered their way through, their incompetencies and did a bad job, and we suffered for them. We've had that from our clinical instructors. We've had those from our senior residents. We've had those from people all the way through our careers. And we don't respect those people, do we? But if you start with true humility, where you actually acknowledge who you are, then you can get to know yourself. And if you get to know yourself, then now you've got the license to get to know others. And if you get to know others, maybe you can gain their trust, and over time, maybe they'll let you lead them. But it all begins with true humility. And to become an effective leader, become an effective physician, and physicians are leaders. This is another thing that just is a sort of a light going off when people come through the Physician CEO program, is to realize that their role as a leader. Because whether or not they acknowledge it, or they have a title or not, as a physician, everyone's looking to you for leadership all the time. And yet people don't embrace that, and they don't do it very well, because they're not even aware of it. They got to fumble their way through the day, and maybe they make comments or do things in ways which they would not want to have be their brand. Maybe they do things that are, showing anger or frustration, or saying things offhand or being sarcastic and truly hurting people that had no idea that, and having no idea that they've hurt people by offhand comment because they weren't appreciating their role as a leader. All this goes into this concept of self-awareness. So I think that if you want to really develop a brand, then I think that it's critically important for every physician to have a brand, whether or not your true customer is a hospital, whether or not it's a patient, whether or not you're leading your staff. You want your brand to be something that you would admire yourself. And I think that if a lot of people looked at how other people would look at them, they would fall short of that goal.
Now, you mentioned physician leadership. That's something that I hear thrown around a lot also. And I think when we talked before, and one thing I learned from you is understanding the difference between learning what you're going to learn in physician CEO versus what specifically will you have in a traditional MBA. So basically what I'm asking is, why do physician CEO when I can do an MBA, right? And I think that what I'm looking for is just your definition of what the difference between leadership and what I'm going to ask you next, but I'd like you to clarify that for the audience.
Sure. So when I was in my MBA at Kellogg, I did my MBA at Kellogg about a decade ago. It was when the Obamacare thing was happening and physicians were being marginalized and we were being called providers and we were told to go work for an ACO in a hospital and they were closing private practices and physicians were really just generally being discounted. And the healthcare was just, in a mess. And still it was the beginning of the mess that just developed since then. It's still a mess. But I was in a public panel kind of conversation with the dean of the medical school. And I said, if we simply had doctors understand business, we would not have a medical crisis. And that's what led to the program coming into being, was because she said, well, they won't come. I said, yes, they will. We're the marketing school. Let's make a program where they can come. She said, well, they won't come. They're too busy. I said, why don't we make it where they can come? It's convenient. So we structured it the way we did. And it led to the program. It's been very successful. But, in that concept, we looked at what are we teaching to MBAs? And what do we want to teach in the concept of a program called Physician CEO? What's the difference between leadership and management? So MBA is about management. The people that populate most MBA classes are the middle managers of the big companies that get sent for their checkbox on their resume to say that they have an MBA. They've been to MBA school, they've been to business school, and then that promotes them to the next level of middle management. That's not leadership. Management is about task-oriented, focused, job-based, get this thing done more efficiently, save money, deliver the product, build a team, all the stuff that goes into, inward-focused, task-oriented achievement, getting your P&L, getting your numbers better, all the different things that they do in management. There's some leadership involved, no doubt. You've got people working for you, but it's really not about leadership. What's a CEO? Well, CEO content is very different. So we took all the basic parts of the MBA program, all the core curriculum of it, the marketing and accounting and finance and all those things. Those are all in the program. But we put a layer of leadership over the top of it. It's not about being an accountant. It's about overseeing your accountants. Because leadership is different. Now, there's two ways that I like to answer this question. And since we got the ability, let me unpack both of them. The first one is that I like to talk about leadership in terms of the three basic roles of a leader. The first role of a leader is to define a vision, a clear and compelling vision that excites people and makes them think about things being bigger than themselves. They work toward a common goal because it's no longer about self-interest. They're working to make something better, making the world better, making their life better, making their community better, making their practice better, whatever that is. But they've got that vision and it's tangible because the leader has articulated it and it's exciting. So that clear, compelling vision from the leader, that's number one job. Number two job is to set expectations. Okay, so now we've got this thing we're going to do. We're going to get to this point by this date. You're going to be doing this by this date. These are the deliverables you're going to give me by this date. These are the kind of roles that you're going to have. These are the processes we're going to put in place. These are all the different things that you're going to do as part of this team to get to that goal, setting clear expectations. Because without expectations, you set people up for failure because they don't know what you want. And then they don't give you what you wanted. You wanted it. They didn't know. And suddenly everyone's upset. So Chris, being able to articulate expectations is critically important as a leader. And then the third thing, and the hardest thing as a leader, is to help people to overcome fear. Fear is everywhere. Change brings fear. Uncertainty brings fear. Unexpected events like COVID bring fear. The job of a leader is to let people see that, fear may be here today, but it's an option. And, like from that movie, danger is real. Fear is an option. Okay. So the danger we need to recognize, but our reaction doesn't need to be fear. Our reaction should be risk management. Our reaction should be caution. It should be putting things in place to prevent that danger from coming true. But fear is always paralyzing. We become stupid when we become afraid. I mean that word literally become stupid. We stop thinking. When we become afraid, what happens? Our eyes dilate, our field of vision narrows. We become focused on what's right in front of us. We might have a lion right in front of us. There might be a door we could step behind right next to us, but we won't even see it because we're focused on that lion. We lose all the ability to consider other alternatives. So fear is paralyzing. So those are the three things that we teach that physicians, as a CEO, must always do. Any leader has to always do, which is set a vision, set expectations, and overcome fear. So that's one way where that's not management. Okay, that's leadership. But the other part of being a leader from management is a leader is really about, and you brought it up earlier, about brand. It's about who are we? Why are we here? What's our purpose? What is it, the organization that we're leading right now? What are we offering? What's our value proposition? And is that the right one? Is that consistent with our values? And how do we interact with other businesses in the area? Do we have good strategic alignment with people who could work with us? Are we externally communicating our value? So leadership, in a CEO sense, is both inward looking to making sure the job is getting done with your managers, and externally looking, outward looking, to make sure that you're positioning your business in a way that's going to grow and is going to satisfy the need or the problem that needs to be solved or whatever you're trying to do in that environment. So leadership is so different than management.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that, because that's oftentimes I think people get confused about it. I get confused about it. I did my MBA in healthcare leadership, 15, 16 years ago. And a lot of the things that you talk about are things that we, covered in our MBA.
Sure.
So for the physicians who are, kind of thinking about going into a program like this, and now that you've clarified, okay, well, if I get an MBA, this is what I should expect to have the skills to do, whether it's in a hospital setting or in a business setting. Whereas I go to to your program, Physician CEO, this is the other aspect that I'm going to get. Can you talk about, some success stories, the typical type of person who came to your program or somebody who came to the program and what the change was after they finished the program?
Sure. And, frankly, not a week goes by where someone doesn't call me and just says, thanks, this has changed my life. It's made things so successful. We just got one from 3 physician CEOs who happen to be in the same area, and they came in subsequent years. And they just opened up a new big clinic that they've opened up, sort of a local, multi-specialty clinic to serve their community in northern Michigan. And they had a big sign, and the 3 of them were standing about, opening day, and it said in the background, this would not have been possible without Physician CEO. I mean, this doesn't get any better than that. So they, that kind of thing happens where people will have a dream and they want to make something happen. We had a guy last year who did a better model than private equity for rolling up clinics of doctors who are about to retire, giving them a way to cash out on their retirement. Because oftentimes when you retire in a private practice, there's no value there, and you just basically walk away. Instead of just shuttering the doors, he put young doctors in place, gave them a payout, rolled up about 50 practices, and just had a $150 million exit, where he sold this business to a private equity hospital that focuses on hospital and healthcare firm out of Toronto. We have a guy who came to the program from another Canadian, came from Toronto. The guy who I just spoke about was American, but the guy I'm talking about now is from Toronto. An ophthalmologist who came to the program saying, I need a little bit bigger space, and I might build an ASC. ASCs aren't very common in Canada, so this was a big idea for him. I spoke to him the other day. He's bought like 6 practices now. He's got multiple ASCs. He's got 40 doctors working for him, a couple hundred employees. I mean, it just gives you the ability to scale. And why? Why? Because it helps you to get the tools you need to be able to actually execute on a vision. And your vision might be fuzzy, but when you leave the program, your vision's not going to be fuzzy because we make you write it down. So actually, part of the program, you leave with your business plan. And that business plan is really your plan. It's your future. So it's really we've not had anyone say, "I wish I hadn't done the Physician CEO program." Not one person. And we've had some amazing transformations. The program is interesting for me, as an organizer, if you will, because it just keeps hitting different segments. So like we've got people retiring who are looking for an exit plan. We've got people in middle age looking for scaling. We've got young people looking to set the world on fire. But we have people from, like this year, 5 continents. People coming from India and Egypt and South Africa and South Korea. I mean, it's incredible. And they're coming with all of this vision and this idea to get things done. And Nee, you know this about me. Maybe the audience is getting a sense of it, but I have a strong bias for physicians. Okay, I think physicians are some of the most special people in the world, and I can back that up with data. Okay, these are people who, from an early age, decided to apply themselves and learn so they could get into a good college, to get into a good medical school. These are people who, throughout college, worked really hard to get the credentials they needed to be accepted and were accepted. These are people who then spent their 20s studying when other people were out buying new cars and going to parties, and they were in the library. They gave their entire 20s over to becoming good, to do one thing, to serve humanity. These are very, very special people. And that's not a subjective statement. That's an objective statement. And yet so many people get to that finish line as a physician, and they get out and they say, is this all there is? Is this what it is? Is it, that's why I love your show with Docs Outside the Box, because you take people who are docs already, these very special people, and you say, what do you want to do? And that's what we try to do with Physician CEO, is we say, okay, what is that vision you might have? How can you articulate it? How can you make it actually come into reality and give you the tools to make it happen? But it's all built from a bias, about a very pro-physician bias, and a sense that when you have people with this much intellectual horsepower and this much passion, to have them working for people who are only business people, and I am a business person, I love business people, nothing against business people, okay? But to have business people telling physicians how they should practice and what they should do is upside down. Physicians should always be in charge.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I look at it almost as, physician CEO is something that you want to do if you want to get your personal growth, right? It's going to help you, really internally make yourself a better person, a better physician, a better entrepreneur, a better leader. And I think a lot of people who heard what you just said, where, someone who is primarily in business, who's giving you advice on how to do proper care or standard of care, that's a problem. It's a problem. Now, the thing that you mentioned, because I think a lot of times people hear this and they're like, well, I don't have time to do this program. Right, is you are saying that people are coming from different continents to come to this program. Can you tell people like the overall structure of how it works through the year? Like, this is not a typical program that you have to be there and be full time and do this, every day, 365. Can you explain how it works?
Sure. We had to make the program affordable for doctors, and that wasn't about money. That was about time. And so most doctors just can't say, oh, I'm going to take time to do an MBA, or I'm going to take time to go to a couple month long course. It would collapse their practice. So we created a program that people come in on. It has 4 different sessions over the course of about 9 months. Each session lasts 5 days. They come in on Saturday, they go home on Wednesday. So if you're in the US anyway, or Canada, you typically back home Wednesday night, where you can then work Thursday and Friday, and you never miss a full week of work. So basically, if you count Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday as being your days off for the program, you're taking 12 days out of a year to do this program, plus your Saturday and Sunday, which were your personal time. And so it's time affordable. When you're there, we kind of fire hose you. We're not going to take you away from your family and everything else just to have you sit in your room and read novels. We use every minute. We have great content. It's not all in a classroom. We do things. We have, so-called field trips and special visits to places and businesses. We do a lot of. It's a very rich curriculum, but you're going from. We leave some time in the morning to get a workout in. So we start at about 8:00, 8:30. People are at the gym before that, and then we go through the day and we go through dinner, and even sometimes after dinner. And so by the time you're done on Wednesday, it's a sort of a mind-blowing experience. And then we let you absorb that information over the next 6 to 8 weeks, use that information, work on your business plan. Maybe there's some reading, usually a little bit, not too heavy. There's no like homework like you had in medical school. Business school is not like medical school. It's about ideas and frameworks.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
It's not about memorizing facts. It's about changing behavior. And so you use it over those days, and then you come back and we do it again. And it's just, so it's 4 5-day modules, Saturday to Wednesday, very compressed, lots of content, and all of it practical. Every professor, when we design the program and as we run the program, every professor has to give to the class and to me how this is going to change the doctor's life when they go home. How are they going to use this? It's about skills transfer. It's not theoretical.
Yeah, that's what I'm all about. And I think the audience is all about it, because one thing that we didn't mention is the last class that occurred, we had about five students who listened to Docs Outside the Box sign up for the Physician CEO program, which, made me feel, it warmed my heart, got me really excited. But just there's an audience out there who's listening who really want to be a part of this. So I'm super excited that we are partnering up again, because I think that everybody who's listening to this show can definitely benefit from being in the program. So really quick, can you tell the audience how they can learn more? Obviously, we're going to have links in the show notes. Can you let them know how they can learn more about this program?
Sure. We have a webpage. It's www.physician-ceo.com, physician-ceo.com. It has tons of information up there about the program, about the enrollment process, about pricing. Let's talk about pricing. To do an MBA today at Kellogg is about $210,000.
Good Lord.
I wanted to be part of a top school. Kellogg's always ranked in the top 5 schools in the world. I wanted to be in a top school. But I think it's only appropriate that physicians with all the value they bring should only be at the top schools at this point. They've contributed so much. They should be getting the best. But that was a big deal. So what we did was we negotiated hard, and we have a program. It's about a $44,000 a year program, but that includes everything. So that includes everything but transportation. So once you're there, your housing, the food, the books, the curriculum, everything is provided, including very nice food and very nice bars and all those things. So we have a very nice, we're treating you like a CEO. You're not coming to be a student. You're coming to be, you don't go to the bookstore. We bring the books to you. You're there as a CEO. So we have to treat you as a CEO. We want you to see yourself as a CEO because you are a CEO. And so that's all part of it. But it's there. But physician-ceo.com is the webpage, and people can always call me. I talk to people all the time, 3 or 4 calls a week. I'd love to hear it. My phone number here is 480-664-1800, and I'll always take a call. Mary in our office will always take a call. We'd love to talk to you about it.
So thank you for dropping that. Just want to let everyone know that I got a chance to talk to the students in Physician CEO, talking to them about my experience, taking something that started off as a passion project, literally me talking to a blank wall, and then growing that, which is the podcast, into a business. And the questions that the students were asking were really thought-provoking. It helped me to change my practice pattern a little bit. And it's something that I've continued to keep in contact with Dr. Guy about also. So, I continue to get benefit from Physician CEO program also, but also definitely, if you go back, I'm going to put the links of some of the physicians that we featured in years past who have been on Physician CEO. So you can definitely take a listen to that also. So Dr. Guy representing Physician CEO, this is a great representation, a great partnership that I'm looking forward to again. And thank you again for coming on Docs Outside the Box.
Well, it's a pleasure. And just let me just not fail to mention that what you're doing is so important. And you've done an incredible job of building up your audience, but it's because of the value you're delivering. Your topics are great, but your quality of production, I think, is also working well in your favor. You've done a great job with that. But the thing that really, I think, makes it click, at least for me, is the fact that you're giving people permission to follow their dreams. And your audience, more than anyone I know, should have license to follow their dreams. And there's a lot of times that doctors will do podcasts and it's about diabetes or arthritis or something for patients. They're continuing to give of themselves. Yours actually feeds the doctors. Yours is actually targeted to help the doctors. And I respect that so much. I admire that so much. What you're doing is awesome. And one last comment, and that is, you mentioned earlier, people say, I don't have time. I don't have time to do that. I'm too busy. Those are the people who need the program the most. Here's a little tip. We all have exactly the same amount of time. We all have 168 hours in a week. And how you use your 168 is entirely up to you. And if you feel you don't have enough time, it's because your personal management is not what it should be. It means that you're allowing others to push you around in terms of your schedule and other things. It means that you're allowing your time to be commandeered in ways that maybe aren't satisfying to you. When you're a physician, if you think about the number of people that depend on you, you think about the impact that you have. And I'm not just talking about your family. I'm talking about if you're in a practice, your staff, their families, all because of you, all the patients you see. If you look at it writ large about how the world is different because you do what you do, it affects hundreds of people. So anything you can do to make you better at what you are isn't selfish. It's not self-serving. It's furthering your ability to help others. It's completely consistent with your mission and what you've declared publicly and privately is your mission, which is to serve other people as a physician. So take the time, consider this. Nee, it's a joy to work with you. Very, very, very impressed with what you've done with your program. And I expect great things to come even more. I look forward to having you back at Physician CEO as well this year.
No pressure. But there it is, Dr. Guy sending me off on a high note. This is what I'm talking about. This is the reason why I love communicating, talking, and partnering with Dr. Guy as well as his program. He knows exactly how doctors are feeling and knows exactly the direction in which they should be going off. And I love that point. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with Docs Outside the Box, is allowing the listeners, whatever range they're in, whether they are in medical school or even pre-medical school and further along the way, to follow their dreams. So Dr. Guy, thank you again for coming on Docs Outside the Box. Remember, everyone, we're going to leave all of the show notes or all of the links in the show notes, so you can go there and click there, as well as his phone number. And we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Thanks, Dee. We'll see you in Chicago.